Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to take a few minutes to talk about privatized or unaccompanied soldier sailor housing. So I represent Virginia's 2nd Congressional District down in the Hampton Roads area. And although we lost Norfolk Naval Base with redistricting, it's still very close, and we're home to the largest fleet on the Atlantic coast. And I have the master jet base, Oceana, in my district. So housing there is atrocious. You know, as a Navy veteran, I was a Navy wife for 20 years. You know, I go on base all the time. I used to have at the commissary. You know, I see where those guys live. And the quality of life aspect, we talk about that. And I know recruitment retention is down. And I mean, not only is housing a social determinant of health for people, but if we don't offer and at least get that quality of life piece back, we are never going to improve our numbers. And we talked to the leadership over at Oceana. Specifically, those guys are so, there's 3 condemned and listed barracks. There's no privatized housing on base there. There's only 1 at Norfolk. We're charging our enlisted sailors for Wi-Fi usage. I could not believe the Wi-Fi plans range from $50 to $200 for, I mean, the first weekend that I held office here, I brought my DC staff down to Virginia Beach, and I put them in my minivan, and we drove to Norfolk, and we drove to Oceana, and I said, look at where we are asking our single sailors to live. Here's the barracks, here's the galley. Now think of any 4-year college or university you have been to lately, and think about how beautiful those places are, and think about what we're asking those kids in the same age ranges to do. I've been to college, I know what those guys are doing every night of the week, and think about what we're asking those 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds to do. So if we don't prioritize that, so I hear you about all these other, and the energy project thing specifically, if we are sacrificing quality of life like housing and barracks issues for things like energy projects, that's not the right place to prioritize. We're not going to have people to prioritize energy projects for if we don't focus on that first. For me, as a nurse practitioner as well, suicide issues have been real in my district. Quality of life is absolutely impacted by where these guys and girls live. So we've got to do a better job for them. So I know there's alternatives out there, and listening to the discussion, and thank you so much for your testimonies and briefs, but I'm very interested in privatized housing. I know there's probably pros and cons. I think I know the pros, so I'd be interested to hear some of the cons. And then also, is there a way that we're prioritizing amongst the services? It seems like Army's made some progress. I think Navy, especially in my district, I feel like we're really behind the power curve down there for utilizing some of these public-private partnerships. But can you explain just kind of the order of how we're prioritizing who's getting these privatized barracks, and then also if there are any major cons we should consider?
I can tee this off. As part of the ASD EI&E job, I am also the department's chief housing officer. So I am responsible for working with and ensuring that the military departments exercise their oversight authority with respect to MHPI projects. And I think that there's progress that has been made. So the Tenant Bill of Rights a couple of years ago, the fact that we've hired several hundred housing oversight personnel to be in installations and work. But there definitely is, as you've noted, work left to do. So the commitment that we have to ensuring that our service members and their families have places to live that respect the dignity of the work that they're doing is something that we're all committed to. It's a critical readiness issue because of the health. And if I wrote this down right, your reference to the social determinant of health is something that is right up my alley. I'd love to talk more about that with you if we get a chance, because there are aspects of this that we can focus on. In terms of prioritization, I'll turn to my colleagues to let that be something they can speak to.
And Congresswoman, it's nice to see you, and thank you for your focus on quality of life in a place that it is very important to our sailors. As you note, there are barracks in disrepair. There's an example, though, of what is a great authority that we've been excited to have, which is the privatized barracks. I will get back to you on how we prioritize those, but that is something that we are looking to do more of within those authorities, and your district is one of those places. And on your note on wireless, I recently learned that too, and it is top of my list to fix, because I understand the connectivity and the mental health that can come from making a simple change.
Very much. Thank you. Thank you. And real quick, any cons to privatized housing that we should be considering when we're requesting, or is it as good as it sounds and seems?
From our perspective, it has been a very good experience, and we would love to see more of the opportunity to use the authority.
Great. Thank you so much.
Ms. Hicks, I'm going to extend your time a minute because I want to give the Army an opportunity, not from an Army-Navy standpoint, but but the Army has been moving out on this issue, particularly when it comes to the BOQs, the apartment type
Yes.
complexes, and I'd like to give Ms. Jacobson a minute.
Yeah, and if I could chime in too, I would concur. It's painful for me to say, but yes, I think the Army is really blowing some of the other branches out of the water, especially on some of this privatized lodging. So good job.
We have that on the record, Ms. Kiggans.
Feel free to elaborate, Congressman.
Yeah.
So, thank you. We really appreciate that. Obviously, this is very important to us, as you say, for quality of life purposes. On the privatized housing side, we've been, with respect to privatized barracks, we are considering this very, very carefully. We've commissioned a RAND study to give us sort of the pros and cons and do a deep dive. And at the same time, we are right now looking at 2 proposals from our housing providers about how they would address privatized barracks. We have a great situation at Meade. No, at Meade? Yeah, I think it's at Meade. I'm sorry. And where it's working, but of course it's for more senior single soldiers. The question is, how do you ensure continuity of leadership and unit continuity? How do you make sure that leaders have access to the barracks? How do you basically, unit cohesion is critical there, and making sure that leaders have access to those barracks for a whole suite of reasons. So we're examining it very carefully and expect to make some decisions this year.
Good, and that should be a priority as well. Thank you for that. I know on Norfolk Naval Base, with the ship deployment schedules, they were housing those guys just in empty barracks rooms, so there was no unit cohesion. It was very difficult for our enlisted leadership to be checking in on those guys. They were scattered amongst, if you've ever been to Norfolk Naval Base, and a lot of acres. So being able to house them together, yes, for unit cohesion, to be able to provide just some positive activities and things for them to do would be so meaningful for quality of life. So thank you.
Thank you. And to that end, Ms. Kiggans, we're going to request the department come back for a more detailed briefing and really diving into where the services are going, what the commonalities are from OSD's perspective, where you're prioritizing, and hopefully what we'll get out of that is some cross-service lessons learned, and areas to sustain and areas to improve, and really what the trajectory is going forward.